Good afternoon again. Welcome to Bloomerang Academy. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Diana Otero. I am the Product Engagement Manager here at Bloomerang. You might recognize me or my voice from attending our Bloomerang Academy classes or listening to some of our release and help videos. Today, we are sharing a Bloomerang case study that explores moves management with PipeDrive. If you don't know what PipeDrive is, that's okay. You'll find out what it can do today. I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, Jessie Gilchrist. Jessie is a Zapier certified expert and Bloomerang integrations consultant. Sidekick Solutions is a Bloomerang partner specializing in system automations for Bloomerang. Sidekick Solutions has also been a Bloomerang user since 2013, and most recently was part of the Bloomerang team that launched the Zapier app. So we're very excited to have Jessie here today to share her expertise and explore how integrations with Bloomerang can take your fundraising efforts and donor cultivation to the next level. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jessie.
Thanks, Diana. I'm so excited to be here. This is such a fun topic. And I think that you're going to get a lot out of this webinar today. So if you haven't attended one of our case study webinars before, we really like to use these webinars to focus on, real life integration scenarios. So we often get asked how integrations work in real settings with real organizations on a day-to-day basis. So to illustrate how Bloomerang remains the core central system in an organization's tech stack and fundraising strategy, we're going to share the story of Willamette Falls Trust. So we're going to share their journey to automation and their implementation of PipeDrive for the organization's major gift donor pipeline and donor cultivation. Many organizations say that the thought of integrating other apps with Bloomerang can sometimes feel overwhelming or unattainable. And our hope is that by the end of this webinar, that you'll see how one organization was able to successfully implement a donor cultivation solution and integrate it with Bloomerang to attain outcomes that drive their mission and help them meet their campaign goals. So today we are first going to introduce the star of the show, which is Willamette Falls Trust. And we're going to talk through some of the challenges that led them to explore an advanced donor cultivation and pipeline solution. We're going to explore their journey in implementing PipeDrive and deploying an automation that integrates their donor cultivation efforts with Bloomerang. We're going to talk through the outcomes they've experienced and then discuss the Trust's future vision as it leans into the solution and these automations with Bloomerang. So to get a sense where each of your organizations are at today in terms of donor cultivation and major gift tracking, we'd like to do a quick poll. Please let us know how you are tracking donor cultivation and moves management activities at your organization. So maybe you're using a donor cultivation app like PipeDrive or Salesforce. Maybe you're using Bloomerang custom fields and reports. Maybe you're using an Excel spreadsheet, or maybe you're not even tracking this information yet. We'll give just a second here.
Thanks, Jessie, and thanks to those of you who have already answered. We'll leave that up for a couple more seconds here. It looks like so far 54% use Bloomerang custom fields and reports. 26% have said no, we don't track this now, but would like to. 16% said yes, we use spreadsheets. 3% said, yes, we use a donor cultivation app. If you'd like to let us know in the chat what that is, you can do so. No one has said that they don't track this and don't plan to.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Diana. Okay, so that gives me a great framework as we go through this webinar of where each of your organizations are at. So I want to take a minute here and really dive into the star of the show, as I said, which is Willamette Falls Trust. So Willamette Falls Trust is the nonprofit organization that is raising funds and leading Indigenous community engagement in order to realize the collective vision for a spectacular public river walk at the falls in Oregon City, Oregon. That's just about 13 miles south of Portland, Oregon, if any of you haven't heard of Oregon City before. So the Willamette Falls have been a gathering place for Native tribes since time immemorial and is a place of fishing, trade, and industry. And the Trust's vision is to really create a vibrant public space where the lifeway and history of multiple communities can come together at what's actually the continent's second most powerful waterfall. And they really want to create a space where the public can connect to the falls through nature, culture, and community. So now that you have a sense for the Trust's mission, their goal, let's talk about their journey to implementing a donor cultivation and major gift donor pipeline and how we integrated that solution with Bloomerang. So a few years ago, the Trust embarked on its multi-year, multi-million-dollar capital campaign with a phase one goal of $25 million. They didn't have a donor database and no solution for managing their donor cultivation activities or their prospect pipeline. So at first, the Trust started with another donor database and quickly found that it was not robust enough for its needs. Since it was early in the campaign, they really wanted to move to a database that could fit the campaign as it grew and wanted to make the switch before too much data was in the original solution. So it was at this point that the Trust researched other donor database options and identified Bloomerang as its core donor database. And the primary drivers for this decision and why the Trust chose Bloomerang were what are listed here on the screen: cost, the ability to customize the Bloomerang platform, the ability to integrate Bloomerang with other tools they may be using, ease of use and readability of the Bloomerang system, robust pledge tracking, and then ongoing support options. Now, these key factors are likely the same key factors that some of your organizations likely had in making the choice to start using Bloomerang as well. We hear them often from our Bloomerang clients. Now, upon adopting Bloomerang, the Trust at this point reached out to Sidekick Solutions. They were looking for technical assistance and guidance on kind of just best practice database design to support the campaign, donor cultivation, and to create a major gift donor pipeline. Now, the Trust itself, and we're going to have a member of the Trust hop on here in a minute, but the Trust is made up of experienced fundraisers. They are great at what they do in fundraising, but they needed help designing a solution that would help drive and support their campaign efforts. Now, for many organizations, Bloomerang custom fields and its easy-to-use reporting utility provide the customization and flexibility needed to deploy a moves management and opportunity tracking solution. And so I want to point out real quickly here, and you'll probably hear me say this a couple of times throughout the webinar, the solution we're going to showcase today exists on a spectrum where tracking and cultivating donors could occur in a spreadsheet using Bloomerang custom fields and reports, or in a cultivation tool like Pipeline. All of these approaches are viable, and which option would work best for your organization comes down to your organization's needs, the challenges you're facing, and what type of donor cultivation tools you need to help progress your campaign and reach your goals. So the Trust was embarking on this phased, multi-year, multi-million-dollar capital campaign, and their need for advanced donor cultivation and pipeline reporting extended beyond the functionality that they could get in Bloomerang with custom fields and reports. Specifically, they needed dynamic pipeline progress and conversion reports. They wanted activity tracking and management of activities across the portfolio. And they wanted to find a piece of software or a tool that reinforced the donor cultivation process, meaning they really wanted a solution that was going to support and drive them to move prospects forward through their pipeline. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Alexis. She is the campaign director at Willamette Falls Trust. And I've asked her to hop on the webinar and share throughout the webinar, in her own words, the Trust experience. So Alexis, we've touched on this a little bit already, but can you give some background into what led the trust to explore a donor cultivation tool outside of Bloomerang?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's morning here in sunny Oregon City, Oregon. So I'm glad to hear it's sunny in other parts of the country too. As Jesse mentioned, I'm the campaign director for the trust. So I manage the overall fundraising strategy. I am not a database expert, but like I'm assuming many other fundraisers on this call, I have used many databases in my time and career as a fundraiser, including Razor's Edge, Tessatura, Salesforce, Little Green Light, and now Bloomerang and PipeDrive combo. So those of us who are in fundraising, we know how important it is to have a database that can help support the work that we're doing. The reason that we switched from Little Green Light to Bloomerang was that although we were at the very beginning stages of our kind of multi-million-dollar capital campaign, I wanted to make sure to pick a database that could grow with us and support all of our pledge tracking and gift tracking. And so Bloomerang was definitely the right move, but it didn't have the really robust moves management tracking that I needed to be successful at managing kind of our growing pipeline of donor prospects. So I knew that which reports I needed, I knew what I wanted them to look like, I knew what kind of activity tracking I wanted to see. And although I'd created some custom fields in Bloomerang that were working for me at some level, I knew that I needed more. I needed reports like how many donors are in a cultivation stage at any given point. I needed a robust pipeline report, a gift table report, what my conversion rates were for securing gifts. I just needed more robust reporting and filtering. So I Googled moves management Bloomerang. I figured I couldn't be the only one that needed this. And found an article that was written by the Sidekick Solutions team and reached out to that team and kind of started this conversation. And here we are today, almost a year later.
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. So what Alexis has described is a really common experience we hear across organizations, especially if you're kicking off or maybe you're in the middle of a larger capital campaign. And so we're going to transition now to starting to talk about kind of how we went and supported the trust and identifying what the best solution would be to meet its robust fundraising needs and moves management pipeline or moves management activities and donor pipeline. And so Alexis is going to hop on here again in a few minutes and share some more. But what I want to do now is I want to talk about kind of the approach that we took with the trust when identifying what tool was going to work best for them. So when considering adding a new app or tool to a tech stack, we often see that organizations search for a tool first and then adapt their workflow to fit the solution. This can often result in long-term frustration as the tool may or may not fully support the use case. So when we started working with Willamette Falls Trust, we really communicated that it's important instead to focus on the mission, the organization's strategic plan, and goals, allowing the true use case to drive the adoption of new technology. So if you start by identifying the use case, confirming its alignment with your goals, and defining the experience you want to have, it's a lot easier then to go into the marketplace and find the tool that best fits your use case and, in this case, is integration friendly so that you can integrate it back with your donor database at the core. So this is exactly what the trust did. We spent time at the start of our relationship discussing their use case, what their donor cultivation strategy was, what their pipeline reporting needs were before we ever made the jump to add a new tool to its tech stack. So it was during this process that we analyzed what needs could be met in Bloomerang and which needs would require an external solution. And ultimately, PipeDrive was chosen as the ideal app for donor pipeline, cultivation, and moves management. And this is where Bloomerang's ability to talk to other apps and integrate with other apps comes into play. So it's easy to say that Bloomerang has truly positioned itself as the most integration-friendly donor database in the marketplace. Now, when we talk about Bloomerang integrations, there are two types that we should differentiate between: native and custom. Native integrations are often sometimes called direct integrations, and those are built and live within your Bloomerang database. And you're likely familiar with these as they include FundraiseUp, QuickBooks, MailChimp, GiveButter, DonorSearch, and the list goes on. Now, Bloomerang doesn't have a native integration with PipeDrive. And so we needed to look at a custom integration using a platform called Zapier. Zapier is the software that enables additional Bloomerang integration and automation opportunities. It's essentially a middleware that sits between your Bloomerang database and the other apps you're using, helping them talk to each other. At its core, Zapier is automation software. You can build one integration or many, automating hundreds of tasks around your Bloomerang database within a single platform. So at Psychic Solutions, we get really excited about Bloomerang Zapier integrations, and you may be wondering why. And so there are really three primary reasons why custom integrations with Bloomerang using Zapier are a true value add for your organization. First and most important, Zapier connects to over 3,000 other applications. Any app in Zapier's directory can be connected to Bloomerang. So if you go to zapier.com/apps, you will see their full directory of the over 3,000 applications they have available. And so you can search for applications you may be using and see if they have a connection with Zapier. Being able to connect Bloomerang to Zapier extends the boundaries of your Bloomerang database, and because the amount of apps that you then have access to and can integrate with, just as you can see, the number 3,000 is a big number. Now you probably aren't using all of those, but it really provides an opportunity for you to tap into other best-in-class tools that you want to use to support your organization and support your fundraising needs. Also, it's important to note that if one of Bloomerang's native integrations doesn't meet your organization's use case, Zapier can also be used to design and deploy a similar, more customized version of that integration. The second reason we get excited about Zapier is because Zapier was designed for anyone to build integrations. You don't need to know how to build code to build Zaps, and anyone can maintain a Zap after it's built. And the last reason we get excited is really this custom integration piece. You aren't limited to a one-size-fits-all workflow, mapping, or formatting. With Zapier, you can truly build an integration that's perfect for your organization and matches your use case. And this flexibility is really important because every organization's fundraising strategy and campaign needs may be different. So we'd like to do another quick poll just to see how many of you are using Bloomerang integrations currently, whether this be custom integrations or native integrations with Bloomerang.
Thanks, Jesse, and thanks, everyone. We'll give a couple of more seconds for people to answer. Please let us know if you use both native and Zapier integrations, or perhaps you only use native integrations or only Zapier integrations, or maybe you've explored integrations but haven't set up any yet, or you haven't explored them at all, and this is like the first time you're hearing about the integrations. It looks like we have 32% said, no, I've explored integrations but have not set any up. 29% have said they haven't explored integrations yet. 26% have native integrations only. 10% have native and Zapier integrations, and 2% have Zapier integrations only.
Perfect. Thank you, Diana. So it seems like we've kind of got everyone across the board here. So let's dive into the integrations and automations we set up for the trust. So Willamette Falls Trust major gift donor pipeline uses both Bloomerang and PipeDrive in a complementary manner. So PipeDrive is used for all donor cultivation, moves management, and opportunity tracking. So to put it really simply, PipeDrive is used for tracking donor gifts that are still in process, meaning they're still being cultivated. Bloomerang is being used for revenue tracking or tracking of closed won opportunities. So with this relationship between the two systems, a core piece of their solution is an integration between Bloomerang and PipeDrive. And I think it's really important here, and I'm going a little bit off script, but I think it's important here to see how these tools are complementary and not that they are serving the same purpose. So PipeDrive is truly filling a need for the trust, while Bloomerang is fulfilling an equally important need, which is the revenue tracking, communication, stewardship piece. So these two systems are really working in tandem to support the trust, and not only its donor cultivation and pipeline efforts, but also in tracking that revenue and continuing to communicate with those donors after a deal is won or an opportunity is won and that revenue is realized. Now, with these two systems serving complementary roles, the trust only needed a one-way sync from PipeDrive to Bloomerang. So the sync is designed to ensure that major gift prospects and PipeDrive exist in Bloomerang as constituents for mailings and other general communications. So you can see that right here at this top level. This also minimizes the data entry the trust needs to perform when deals are won in PipeDrive and they want to enter that pledge or that donation in Bloomerang, because the constituent already exists. So they don't need take some of that data entry off of their plate, freeing up more time. Now, it's important to note that for the trust, prospects are only synced from PipeDrive to Bloomerang once certain criteria are met. And one of the primary criteria is that the prospect must have a steward assigned. The organization may call them solicitors or responsible team members, but the trust calls them the steward. This was added into the integration to ensure that only prospects that are being actively cultivated are synced to Bloomerang. As many of you likely experience already in your own cultivation efforts, the trust has a large pipeline of prospects, but only some are being actively cultivated. Those that aren't active sit in a queue in PipeDrive and may begin being cultivated once space is available in a steward's portfolio. So with this solution and having a piece of that criteria be that a steward needs to be assigned in order for the prospect to sync to Bloomerang, it makes sure that these unassigned prospects remain in PipeDrive and don't clutter up the Bloomerang database for the trust. Now, this one-way sync between Bloomerang and PipeDrive also creates notes in Bloomerang for narrative notes that are added in PipeDrive, and also creates a note on the constituents timeline in Bloomerang when a deal is closed won. In addition to that closed won note being created, the trust also receives an email with details of the deal that was won so that they can manually create the pledge or donation in Bloomerang for revenue tracking. So it shows up right in their email inbox so they can go ahead and enter that in. So you can see that right here.
I'll just pop in real fast on this one because we built, we're kind of a small organization. And so we all know when we get it, when we are successful in asking a donor for a gift and they say yes at this point. But this is one of those things that you and I built together to work on putting together strategies that would work as our organization grew and as our capital campaign became busier, and we were anticipating hiring a database person and with everyone working remote and not just being in an office coming back to the office and saying this person made a gift. We wanted to make it so that we could hire somebody that could be in Ohio that could do data entry for us and would know that we had received a gift to the campaign.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great anecdote to add in there. So this is, and I think it's really important to point out that is one of those pieces. Again, this is a custom solution. We had identified what the need was for Willamette. We talked through the use case, and this really was one of the trust key points, which was developing and designing a solution that would grow with the campaign. And this is a prime example of that. Now, as you can see in this diagram, there's one point in the donor cultivation lifecycle that the trust team needs to manually enter, which again is that gift. But it's also important to note that you can see the activities, those moves management activities, those only live in PipeDrive. So all of the touches they're making with prospects live in PipeDrive, and they can see the history of that deal or that opportunity or ask. but they didn't need and don't need that information in Bloomerang, as it doesn't impact their revenue tracking, doesn't impact their communications with constituents, and doesn't impact their stewardship activities. So you can see that those moves management activities remain in PipeDrive. And so if a member of the trust team wants to see that history of a deal or a closed won deal, they can go into PipeDrive and see that. But it kind of, again, creates that division between the two systems, where PipeDrive is core for donor cultivation, pipeline, and moves management. And Bloomerang is more for revenue tracking, stewardship, general communications from the trust. So now that we've shown how Zapier was used to support the sync of prospect data to Bloomerang, I really want to shift our focus to how PipeDrive supported the moves management and pipeline needs for the trust, and how it's helped advance the trust campaign and donor cultivation activities. So PipeDrive at its core is designed to help organizations work more efficiently. And so across the platform, there are Kanban-style boards and process indicators to help the trust remain focused on moving donors through their pipeline. So this is an actual screenshot of Willamette Falls Trust pipeline. And you can see that it allows you to view that pipeline as a visual board, which helps the trust team quickly view deals and projected revenue for each stage of the pipeline. And this may seem like a really simple feature, and it is, but it really helps maintain the pipeline and ensure it's sufficient to meet campaign goals, because the trust can easily see how many deals are in each stage, what the projected revenue is for all of the deals in that stage. They can see really quickly their total pipeline, projected pipeline based off of probability of what stage the deal is in, and their total number of deals. So at a really quick glance, the trust team can look at this view in PipeDrive and see all of their metrics and get a quick status update of where their pipeline is at and if it is sufficient to meet their goals. Now, this visual board is enhanced by the way it identifies deals and the indicators it provides to help the trust move deals through the pipeline. For example, you can probably see these different colored lines here. So there's blue, yellow, and green. These actually correspond to different segments of major donors the trust pursues: their leadership, major gift, and community level donors. And so with these labels, the trust can quickly see the makeup of deals in each of these stages without having to go into the details or look at a separate view. They can get a quick glance and see kind of where their deals are stacking up in each stage. Now, if that isn't enough, there's also more indicators in PipeDrive that help identify which deals need action. So you can see these red arrows right here that are next to some of these deals. That indicates that the deal has an overdue activity or task associated with it. And the yellow alert, these little yellow triangles, those indicate that the deal does not have a next action scheduled. So little indicators like these make sure the trust team keeps these prospects moving through the pipeline, and that these deals don't, what's sometimes called rot or age off, meaning that we don't want them to stall due to inaction. So those brief indicators give the trust a real quick glance of the health of their pipeline and the health of the deals in their pipeline. Now, the next deal that we want to showcase is activity tracking. So activity tracking for moves management in PipeDrive is both for scheduled items, meaning to-dos, and also completed activities or completed actions. So PipeDrive comes configured with standard activity types like email, phone, mail, meeting to categorize the types of interactions you have with a prospect. These are very similar to what you see in Bloomerang on interaction and task records, the same as the channel. PipeDrive, though, takes this a step further by allowing each user or each organization to customize these types of activities. So that's this top box up here. You can see these are the different activity types. And so for the trust, we were able to add custom types of activities to PipeDrive's standard set to align with key touch points in their cultivation process, and even identify the activity type where a solicitation or ask was made. So it almost became a bit of a hybrid between the channel and purpose fields that we see in Bloomerang. Now, this really is a prime example of how the trust use case informed the design of PipeDrive. And instead of making it was a prime example of how PipeDrive was configured to meet the trust use case instead of the trust trying to fit into a structure that didn't meet the use case. So what you can't see in this detail view here is these 4 little icons that all look the same are different types of meaningful meetings or communications that the trust has with donors. And so they can see, oh, this is a meeting with a board member. It's a meeting with a staff member. It's a tour of the site, to kind of categorize those more custom types of interactions or engagements they have with their prospects. Now, the power of these activities also comes from 3 primary features, which is linking, next action prompts, and indicators. Now, when you create a new activity in PipeDrive, the trust can link to the corresponding deal, person, and/or organization. So each of these links allows the same activity to be viewable in the timeline for the linked records, meaning if the deal, a primary contact, and the organization were all linked to an activity, that same activity could be viewed in the timeline for each of those records. And once linked, in this grid view, you can see right here, you can quickly see for each activity if there's a linked person, a linked organization, if there's a linked deal. Those can all be pulled in as columns. So in a single grid view, you can see the details for the activity as well as the related records. Now let's talk about the next action prompts. And I know Alexis is going to jump in on that one or on this one here and probably provide a little bit of feedback. But one of the things that PipeDrive does is that it auto prompts users to create another activity or a next action every time they mark an activity as done. So every time a member of the trust team marks an activity as done and clicks save, PipeDrive automatically opens a new activity screen, a blank one just like we're seeing here, for that user to create a next action. So this ensures that prospects continue moving through the pipeline towards solicitation and towards that revenue realization. So Alexis, I'm going to let you jump in here because I know you have something to say about those next action prompts.
Well, I frankly find the next action prompts a little bit aggressive, but my colleague, Leslie, a major gift officer, she really loves them. She thinks that they help her keep on track, be thinking about solicitation strategy within her portfolio, keeps her motivated towards moving forward. But yeah, I don't use the next activity in PipeDrive probably as much as I should, but I really find it super helpful for tracking the last activity. You know, for major gift work and campaign work, you want to be able to say, what was my last touch point with this person? And being able to say like, oh God, I haven't talked to them in a month. I need to reach out. Is like those reports are so helpful. And then just having it be so visually coded is really helpful for our whole team too. So when we're doing portfolio and pipeline solicitation meetings with our team, with our capital campaign consultant, our executive director, and maybe some other folks, campaign cabinet members, we can pull this up on Zoom and look at the activities. And it's really easy for people just to have those visual cues and be able to see what activities and what donors need attention paid to them. So even people who aren't as familiar or fluent in PipeDrive, they are able to use the tool with us, kind of guiding them from behind the scenes. The other thing with the activities I like is that our major gift officer, Leslie, my colleague that I mentioned, she's set up automatic reports that email me her monthly activities so that we can track how many touches she's having every month, who she's doing solicitations with or briefings with. If she's getting stuck with a donor that she's reached out to them multiple times, she's not hearing back from them, we can kind of work together to come up with strategies for how to move that donor forward in the cultivation pipeline.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the things I want to touch on here is that you can probably, a lot of you probably picked up in Alexis's feedback there that, PipeDrive may not always be the perfect solution. We've designed it to their use case and to their needs, but each user has different preferences. So it's always so interesting to hear, and we see this across the board with a lot of solutions, is Alexis finds the next prompts a little bit hindering, Leslie loves them, keeps her prospects moving throughout the pipeline. So just kind of want to point out there that there is still that level of user preference. And so designing a solution to meet your use case, there will still be, little rubbing points here and there. And for Alexis, the next action one is one of those. So the next feature we want to talk about in PipeDrive is the Smart Email BCC. And so we're only going to touch on this briefly because it's self-explanatory. PipeDrive's Smart Email BCC allows the trust to include a BCC email on communications with prospects and automatically log the email as an activity in PipeDrive. So similar to the BCC functionality you have in Bloomerang. The difference is that this feature automatically links their email not only to the related prospect record, but also if there's an open deal for that prospect, it will link that deal to the activity. If the email address doesn't match an existing prospect, it'll actually create a new prospect in PipeDrive using that email address. So again, this is a quick little simple feature that minimizes the amount of data entry required by the trust, as it'll create a record for those new prospects or those new emails.
And Jesse, I'll just want to add, I love this. I love this. This saves me so much time, and it just automatically connects my emails to the donors. This is like my favorite thing about PipeDrive, I think.
Yeah, it's a great tool. And I didn't mention this at the start, but at Sidekick Solutions, we use PipeDrive as well. And we use the BCC all the time. And I think the piece of it that's so powerful is obviously the linking to the prospect record is huge, but it's the linking to the deal where you don't have to go in and do that linking. It's smart. It does it for you. And the amount of time it saves you and saves us at Sidekick as well is just huge. So we already touched a little bit on the projections that are available in that pipeline view, but there's another forecasting feature in PipeDrive that I think is equally impactful. So instead of seeing the projected revenue for deals in each stage, the forecast view in PipeDrive allows the trust to see projected revenue based on the expected close date for the deal. So these forecasted projections include both open deals, so those are all those ones in white, as well as closed deals like this one in green. And so this can paint often a more accurate picture of when the trust can expect revenue. Obviously, a lot of their major gifts that they're pursuing right now are to secure a pledge, not an actual physical donation, but the pledge for that commitment. So some of that does require some tweaking, but you can see that it does allow them to really quickly see what is the projected amount of deal or revenue for those deals that would be closed in each of those coming months. And so this kind of feeds right into the last feature we want to showcase. And we're going to do these again pretty quickly, but these are a few of the insight reports that the trust has developed to inform its donor cultivation efforts, its campaign strategy, and provide metrics on its campaign progress. So one of the primary reports the trust utilizes is a campaign gift table. This is a performance report that calculates the number of deals in each of its prospect segments and shows the breakdown of those deals by status. So if they're won, lost, or open. So this allows them to really quickly see for each of those different giving tiers that they are targeting prospects for, how many deals are in each of those, what's the average value of the deal, what's the total value, gives them a lot of those quick metrics and a quick view that can be really helpful for team meetings, presentations to board, things like that. Just handles all those calculations for them.
Yeah, these particular reports, tools, filters, these are really just another amazing visual aid that gives us a high level and both a high level and a day-to-day kind of assistance. So like if I can see that I've got a lot of donors stuck in, for example, like the focus cultivation stage, and I know I need to move them to briefing, I need to make sure to carve out time on my calendar to send out individualized emails, get on the phone to request meetings. If we're trying to move a lot of folks from cultivation to focused cultivation, like what's the global strategy there? What do we want to do to deepen those prospects' engagement. So you want to do some kind of group activity or some kind of event, or pre-COVID, that would have been, the event thing would have been more of a possibility. And then the revenue forecast we love using as a visual aid because it gives kind of a snapshot of upcoming plans, solicitations, and which donors are at the center of our team's priority list. So, as major gift fundraisers know, having your list of priority prospect names just like right in front of you in a variety of different ways is super essential. So for our capital campaign, we didn't start with a baseline of constituents. Our organization was formed really to raise significant amount of dollars to support the capital efforts at Willamette Falls. And so our pipeline is always kind of fluctuating as we add people in or disqualify people. And we're operating at a 4-to-1 prospect ratio. So like if we want to raise like $10, we need to have $40 worth of prospects. So I am always really trying to grow the pipeline and keeping a good eye on it to predict revenue forecast and like what the success, the probabilities are going to be of our solicitations.
Yeah, and Alexis, I think that's going to lead you right into talking about this deal conversion and how this really helps you see the health and the progress of your campaign.
Yeah, we're always, capital campaigns are a marathon, not a sprint. And so we're always modifying kind of our projected revenue, our goals, and trying to keep super flexible, but we have to make decisions off of hard numbers. And so having this deal conversion be able to show us what those hard numbers are helps with some hard decisions. We don't have enough time today to walk through the full reporting functionality, but I hope a couple of these snapshots can show you how powerful the metrics can be in helping drive towards moving folks through moves management and tracking your solicitation success.
Absolutely. Yeah, so at this point, I'm sure there's a few of you on the call here that may be wondering how much time and investment it took to implement the trust solution. So here are some quick metrics to provide the scope for implementing the solution. So PipeDrive system configuration and implementation of the initial integration between PipeDrive and Bloomerang was completed in 3 months. Iterations to that integration were made over the 2 months following initial rollout. The trust dedicated around 2 hours a week of internal resource toward the implementation effort, and this was one staff member. This was Alexis, and this went on for about 8 weeks. Implementation costs were around $4,500. And I think it's important to note that, and we've included that on here, is that following implementation, the trust also kept Sidekick on for ongoing integration maintenance and monitoring, as well as general technical assistance on the solution, that being both the integration, Bloomerang, and also PipeDrive. And so that ongoing support was around $3,000 for about the last, I would say, 6 months or so. And we've continued that moving forward for the next year. In automation tools, the trust pays around $840 annually for tool costs. So that comes out to $45 a month for 3 PipeDrive users or licenses, and around $25 a month to support their Zapier subscription. So if we were to bundle that all together, puts the trust total automation cost for 2021 between around $8,000 to $10,000. And that includes implementation, ongoing support, and their automation tools. So Alexis has shared a lot throughout this, but I really kind of want to give her the floor here to talk about the trust experience with adopting PipeDrive and using the solution to support its campaign.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I've worked with a lot of databases. This is the 3rd database migration I've been through as a fundraiser. The first was with a large organization, and there were a lot of different players, and it ended up being a total nightmare. The second one was from little green light to Bloomerang, and that was lovely and easy. And then this one was really lovely and easy too. And this wasn't a full database migration, more of an integration. But what I really appreciated about our move to PipeDrive was that when I started the conversation with the team from Sidekick, they didn't say, "Oh, PipeDrive is your solution." They said, "What do you need?" And we outlined this big document of all the things that I needed and my dream list. And they came back and said, I think we might have a solution for you that might not cost you $1 million, and we really like working in it, and let's play around and let's see if it works. So my whole dream list wasn't able to come into PipeDrive. One thing that's come up is that we move people into various stages depending on where they are on their solicitation timeline. And I had a meeting with somebody and felt as though I moved him from focused cultivation to briefing, right? I moved him in a stage and I forgot to do it in PipeDrive. And so I asked Jesse, can I manually change the date? It was a month later. Can I manually change the date of the stages? And she's like, no. So that was kind of a realization for me of all right, I need to be kind of a little bit more on it in terms of tracking stuff. I can't retroactively change some of these stages. And Jesse, wasn't there a thing with the steward reporting challenges that I wasn't able to get exactly what I wanted?
Yeah, so the trust had hoped to get some of those the conversion reporting, the gift table reporting, things like that, kind of more granular down to a steward level. And in order to do that, there was a couple of limiting factors. One being some of the features available at the level of PipeDrive subscription that the trust has. But what we were able to do is just kind of pivot. So a lot of times when implementing a new solution or having a list of needs, sometimes it results in kind of a rethinking of how that item or that metric is going to be delivered. So for example, the trust was looking for what we had envisioned initially would be a PipeDrive insight report of how many activities are being taken for prospects assigned to each steward. Now, the insights reports in PipeDrive are driven off of users, and the trust didn't want to create users for every single one of their stewards. So instead, we were able to create some filter views in the activity table in PipeDrive to allow the trust to see those metrics really easily, really cleanly, and gather that data that they were looking for. But it did require an adjustment to how we had initially discussed and hoped to gather those metrics for the trust at discovery versus how we were actually able to deploy them when it came to building and configuring the solution.
Yeah, and I feel like there's things that we still are kind of working through on a regular basis, oh, can I do this? How does this work? It's not set in stone how we are in PipeDrive right now. I think it'll continue to grow and change. And Jesse mentioned earlier that the trust kept Sidekick solutions on. Sidekick set us up to not have to keep them on. They told us, gave a huge detailed report of how to update the Zapier zaps, how to do all the things. But we're a really small team with 2 fundraisers trying to raise a lot of money, and I wanted my time to be focused more on donor cultivation than database management, and so we chose to keep Sidekick on. I don't think everyone has to do that, but that was our choice.
We love working with the trust, but yes, we really try to set clients up with whatever solution we build that they can manage it themselves post go live. Is always the intent, but we are here to support, as we're doing for the trust, for any organization that needs it. So we're getting close to our time here, but now's the fun part, which are what are some of the outcomes that the trust has seen. So it's important to note that the trust is so early in its capital campaign, and so revenue related outcomes are still kind of yet to be realized. But there are some outcomes related to donor cultivation, moves management, and how the trust uses the tool internally that I think are important to note, and how it's really impacted the trust ability to enact its fundraising strategy. So these anecdotes have come straight from Alexis, and I'm sure she'll jump in here as well, but the solution has really allowed the trust to maintain consistent progress cultivating its donors due to next action prompts, status indicators, and the ability to link those actions directly between the deal, the contact person, and an organization if applicable. The reports and insights and different metrics we've talked through, obviously, I don't think it needs to be said that they are highly impactful. They inform campaign strategy, and they really allow the trust to pivot if they need to based off of the trends or the activity they're seeing with their prospects. The solution really supports team meetings and planning for cultivation efforts. And Alexis, you've touched on this already about how easy it is to share the screen during a Zoom call. And anyone who isn't familiar with PipeDrive is able to easily see the status of the records you're showing, whether that be deals or activities. You can see that really cleanly. And then the user interface is also really great, where it allows the trust team to see the history of a deal and track lost deals for future solicitations at a different level. So they can see for the same prospect, if a deal was lost at $100,000, they can come back in 3 months later, see the history of that deal, and maybe change their strategy or open another opportunity that they want to pursue with that prospect, whether it be at the same level or a different level. So Alexis, I don't know if you have anything else to add in terms of what you guys have seen.
Yeah, real quickly, because I want to leave space for questions, but like our whole team really likes the database, and that's kind of an accomplishment in itself. The visual aids are amazing for being able to quickly understand which prospects need to be touched and which ones don't. There's custom things that you can do for your own use cases. We're all super happy with it. Yeah,
that's great. So I want to kind of talk a little bit really quickly about the future vision. So the automation journey and use of a new piece of technology in your tech stack is never over. It's kind of a day-to-day journey. So as more use cases require automation or other apps are added to support the trust campaign, we intend to continue improving and expanding the solution and maybe possibly adding more solutions that are integrated with their Bloomerang database. So here's kind of a quick taste of the future that the trust is working toward. We want to continue evolving their progress and conversion reports to support that kind of long-term reporting and analysis. Again, we're early in the campaign here, so we do anticipate that as the campaign progresses, we will need to tweak some of the reports to do more date range-based comparisons to see how the trust is progressing. The trust is also going to start using Bloomerang for revenue tracking, and then we will iterate PipeDrive as needed to support that piece. We want to, always be open to iterating PipeDrive as needs may arise to track new data or accommodate new use cases as the campaign progresses. Obviously, anything that we implement, we want to make sure it's scalable for the team, and we want to help the trust strengthen their ownership and role as a database administrator in both Bloomerang and PipeDrive. So that's really kind of the future vision. And I want to kind of leave with a final thought, and then we'll open up for questions. I know we've only got a couple minutes here, but when we think about system automation, it's helpful to think of it as stacking bricks. Once you have one automation in place, you level up to the next layer and so on. And this can be done by adding another app to your tech stack or enhancing an existing automation. And so while this graphic on the screen may look a bit complex, it's illustrating this approach. And the trust, without realizing it, has adopted this. They've built a strong foundation with Bloomerang as its donor database and center of its tech stack. And this foundation is the springboard that's allowed the trust to iterate forward to the adoption of PipeDrive and also iterate from there to feature enhancements to that solution. So really, Bloomerang and PipeDrive had this complementary relationship in the trust structure that allows them to do those core kind of key features in Bloomerang, which is revenue tracking, stewardship, and then sending just kind of general donor communications out of their Bloomerang database once those prospects are over there. So it truly has been my pleasure presenting today, presenting with Alexis. Alexis, I want to give you a huge thank you and round of applause for really, hopping up on the stage with me here and sharing the trust experience. As a reminder, this is on a spectrum in terms of moves management solutions that are available to you in using Bloomerang. Spreadsheets are viable, Bloomerang custom fields and reports are viable, and a cultivation tool like PipeDrive is viable as well. It truly comes down to your organization's use case and their needs. So while we open up for some questions, I'm going to have Diana launch our last poll here, which is that if you have questions about integrations or you would like help setting up an integration, please feel free to let us know in the poll and we will follow up with you after the webinar. And then Diana, if you want to take over, we can open up for some questions. And I know Alexis is available for just general fundraising questions as well.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And again, thank you, Alexis, for being here with us. I love what you said earlier. A frequent question we always get is how do you do something like this if you're a 1 or 2 person shop? And you had mentioned earlier that the trust is a 1 or 2 person shop and you want to set it up for growth, but automating tasks like this and processes like this really help you focus on the donors. So I loved hearing that. Thank you. And yes, we have a couple of minutes for questions. So please let us know if you have any questions. We do have a question here. Does Bloomerang offer discussions with current subscribers about our current needs and how Bloomerang can fulfill those? You can talk with your customer success manager in Bloomerang, but where Sidekick Solutions really comes in is if you need something beyond what Bloomerang can provide. And they really take a look at what you need and are there solutions out there that you can use with Bloomerang to help with that. Looks like Allie's providing additional insight there as well. Thanks, Allie.
And I'm seeing a question in the chat from Holly about how this might work with foundation and grant cultivation. We use it the same way as, either foundations come in 2 forms. You're either working with dead people's money or live people's money. And so if it's a live person's money, I treat it the same way that I do like an individual donor in terms of like cultivation and prospecting.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexis. You're welcome, Holly.
Perfect. Well, Diana, I will hand it off to you.
Well, thank you again, everyone. If you have additional questions that you might think of afterwards, please feel free to reach out. I know Jesse's door is always open, and you can also reach out to Bloomerang and we can forward them over to Sidekick if you think of more questions after today.
And also, real quick, Diana, like my door is also open. If anyone wants to contact me about PipeDrive, about how we use it for our moves management, like I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm not a database expert and I've managed to make this work for us. And so I always want to help other fundraisers be able to be successful in raising money.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexis. I didn't want to volunteer you, but thank you for volunteering that. Yes, please, if you have additional questions, I love that everyone is just so willing to help each other and share best practices with each other. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We at Bloomerang are very excited for the extended capabilities possible with custom Zapier integrations. We're excited to see where all of you will take it, knowing that Zapier integrates with over 3,000 different apps out there. So we'll include that link in the slides if there is an integration if there is an app that you already use and you want to find out if you can connect that with Bloomerang, check that out. So we hope that you can find a way to automate your processes and work better with Bloomerang. Thank you all again and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye.